Tom, anything? Like I said, I'll get with you on this, I know it's a lot to try to keep up with.
Not really, but that's good to know, not only from my standpoint for the public that's watching, and I've asked department heads that if they couldn't be here today to watch, so I think that's good information for them to know.
Okay.
Beyond that, if it's appropriate, I could talk about some of the schedules that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Just from a budget standpoint, I think I've gone over this with the board earlier. It's my intent to meet with the departments basically March 21st through April 18th. They've already submitted their data. I want to meet with them individually, go through the request, make sure I understand them before we make any modifications. And after, in late April, I realize the schools aren't required to submit their budget until May, but I generally have things shored up by then. Meet with the school superintendent and then outside agencies in late April, and then by early May, be able to update the board on where we're at in the budget process, and then formally present the budget in June. I know that might be a little later than normal, but because of some of our issues, I think that would be important. And really, hopefully, we will, the formal budget presentation hopefully will be a formality. Hopefully I will have updated the board in May enough so that you kind of know where we're standing and where we're heading. That kind of ties into the second schedule that I have, what I wanted to update you about, and that's the audit schedule and how it impacts the budget schedule. Right now, the last formal audit we have is dated June 30, 2020. As you all know, we've been late with other information, and as a result, we've been kind of in communication with the local government commission to get those issues resolved. Right now, we are looking to have data to our auditors by mid-May to complete the June 30, 2021 audit, with the hope is to present that audit report to the Board of Commissioners at your August 2022 meeting. And then hopefully the way things are going with the bank reconciliations, will be in a position to get the information to the auditors, not exactly on time, a little later, with the hope that the audit ending June 30, 2022 can be presented to the board late in 2022. And then the budget we're working on now, the ending 2023, we'll be back on schedule then to get all that data to auditors and hopefully kind of put some of these reporting problems behind us. But hopefully at your August meeting, we'll be in a position to kind of get back on track with the LGC. It's my intent to communicate with them the first of next week about the progress, the schedule I've just discussed with you, just to make sure they're comfortable that we're doing everything we need to do to keep them happy. So that's kind of the budget schedule and the audit schedule. The dilemma, of course, is that we're going to be presenting and adopting a budget before you get your audit report for last year. That's of course a concern to me. Now hopefully we'll have data from them, the auditors, so we'll have a better understanding of where we're at before that adoption occurs. Another reason that I'd like to put the formal adoption off as long as possible. But that's a little disconcerting, and I just wanted to advise the board that I will probably be very conservative in putting the upcoming year's numbers together. Of course, that's not to say you can't amend your budget mid-year and things of that nature, but without having that audit number, normally it's a pretty straightforward process. You start at A and you go to B, the A being your audit numbers, but we don't have A. So I think we're going to have to be very conservative putting next year's budget together, and then we'll just hope for the best once the audit findings come back. Is is the board comfortable with all that? Is there any information you need? Again, I intend to communicate with the LGC and our auditors early next week, just to make sure that we get them what they need as quickly as possible, because I know that's a board priority.
Right. Did I understand you say by the end of this year, we will be done with the FY 21-22?
That is my hope.
I mean, that's great.
That is my hope as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah,
And again, I hope to, I wanted to have this meeting before I called the LGC and our auditors. I really want to sit down face to face with our auditors to make sure that they understand, which I think they do, kind of the urgency of this, that we want to get back on schedule. We know we're behind, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to work with them to get that done.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Of course, as you mentioned, the key is once we get there, then to maintain on time. So, all right. Okay. Just thinking, I went through those things pretty quickly that I just stated earlier. If we'd like to take a few minutes and go back through each one individually, we can.
I have my copy.
Okay.
Everybody.
Well, Ricken and, Mr. Miller, they should have one too, though.
Yeah, we was at the.
At the retreat last year.
Dr. Sim wasn't there.
I don't have a copy.
Okay.
Dr. Sim doesn't have a copy, but I know our clerk still has it on her. I still have mine in my notebook.
Right, I got it, yeah.
Do you have it?
I guess the main thing now is just make sure each commissioner has a copy, because we'll have more, meetings on the budget and all, and I think what Commissioner Gable pointed out, and I'm not sure this is what he mentioned about adding is covered in detail, and I think that was a good addition that we need to put in it. Right now I'm just putting it out there. If anybody has anything else, if there's any one of these that you want to talk a little bit more in detail, well, now, I know it's you may need to go back and refresh yourself with it, and then we can talk about it more at a later meeting. That makes sense. Okay? Okay, Mr. Fonda, I don't have anything else to add at this point.
If I could cover a couple more subjects.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's open.
And actually, Mr. Newton touched upon it. I've spent a big part of this week dealing with the subject I'm ready to acknowledge I don't know a lot about, and that's our computer systems. I think Mr. Newton discussed the AS400 and moving to various software programs. One of the things I think that we're going to be dealing with is needing to get IT some help, because we have some ongoing projects moving forward, such as moving to the new, the former PD facility. We're going into a zoning effort, which has required a lot of effort with GIS. Movement, in my opinion, away from the AS400. I met with Miss James yesterday. She probably has the most. She has the knowledge of the AS400. I'm sorry. And again, I'm not being critical of the AS400. It's been a workhorse for probably 40 years. The issue is it's not a particularly flexible platform. And I think we're going to be moving to newer software packages, as we discussed. So I've been trying to put together an incremental process so that we'll begin moving certain programs, utility billing, tax issues off of the AS400 onto different platforms. And I think that IT is going to need some help in doing that. Not necessarily recurring, but they may need to contract for some of that, because they have a lot to do in a fairly short period of time. And it would certainly be my hope that we could migrate off of the AS400 by the end of the next fiscal year. So I don't want anybody to be surprised if we have some one-time money there to basically facilitate that. And I think that'll be in the long-term best interest of the county on any number of levels, to bring that about. And so I just wanted to let the board know we're trying to integrate that effort and migrate away from the AS 400 and get some of these projects checked off the list. Let me see what else I had.
I think just on that subject, and Ms. Berry may know more about this than I do, but I'm just give you a little bit of background on this thing. You know, the board had made the decision and approved the county to move forward with going to a new software system, and that was already in process. So I guess where I'm going with this thing is, may want to just check the budget and see what's already there. And if we need to add anything to it, then that's fine. And what Mr. Newton's talking about is whatever. He's made us aware a couple of months ago that the software selected for appraisals and collections wasn't suitable, and that's why he's made the issue to change it. So that's kind of where we are with him. So that might be some information you could look for and see just kind of how all that's been working since it was started. And like I said, if there's not enough funding in place to complete it, then we'll need to do that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Could I make a comment?
Go ahead.
In keeping an open mind about the IT and the one-time funding, I think we want to make sure we're keeping that open mind about the finance office as well to get us caught up and get on time. So I know we've made it known that if you need additional help with accounting, those kind of things, make sure to tell us as soon as you can, because the IT and the accounting both, with our fund balance, there couldn't be a better way to use some of that money.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Pond.
The other issue I have, and it's noted on your agenda, is personnel requests. I've gotten certain departmental requests are in, and I was asked early on, you know, particularly in light of the pandemic and things of that nature, should requests be made? And the thing I've made clear is if you have a need, you need to include that request in your budget. This may not be the year for it, but I need to hear from the departments. We all need to hear from the departments on what their needs are and what additional personnel would provide. With that said, I've also told the departments in discussions I've had with various commissioners, the priority seems to be right now to focus on kind of what we have. Let's take care of the employees we have. Let's do what we need to do to fill the open positions we have first, and kind of make that the priority before we kind of look beyond that. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from a few of you. And if I'm misreading that, if you could let me know. Otherwise, that's what I'm looking at in terms of how we look at employee compensation for next year.
I think that's a fair assessment. And look at positions that are open that need to be filled, and take care of what we currently have before we go past that.
I'll relay that to the departments, and again, we'll hope for the best. And of course, if there are positions out there that can get partial grant funding, things of that nature, that's a little different. But things that 100% impact the general fund, water and sewer fund, you know, I really do think we've had issues filling positions, and hopefully with the pandemic kind of easing up, that will change. But we may need to look at focusing on improving some of those salary areas in order to attract the people we want to attract and then keep them.
I think another piece of that too is, first of all, training to make sure that people are up to speed, and then more important than that is succession planning. So that when you have a vacancy in a key position, that there's somebody that can be promoted to move into it, or somebody can keep things going while that, you know, when that key person is out of place for whatever reason.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that's a key point. That's one of the issues we've encountered with the computer system. There's not a lot of redundancy built in that, and as we migrate away from the AS 400, it's going to be important to have, you know, key people not only in IT but also in the departments that have fundamental knowledge of those new programs, so that again, somebody leaves, something of that nature, we have that redundancy built in, so we're not put in a panic situation.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
One thing to keep in mind, last summer, we had a discussion about, actually it was late last spring, about time and grade, step raise. We were gonna eventually go into that, because I think some of the problem is we have a 12-year employee, when the new employee comes on, that are making the same money. So I don't know, with all the complications, you know, with the audit on time and everything, but keep in mind that I think we all agreed that we wanna look into that for the future, and a pay scale step increase with really like a performance evaluation tied in with it, you know.
If I could address that, Mr.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
I've had some discussions with HR and finance, and I realize that the compression issue there causes a lot of anxiety amongst employees. It doesn't help morale. I don't know that we can do anything in the next few months in terms of an overall pay plan. I don't think you want the short-term guy doing that, but HR certainly is exploring that. And there are a few things we can do in the budget to try to begin the effort to alleviate that compression issue, with more of a broad brush than the specific brush you're talking about in terms of evaluation system and step and grade. Those are the systems I'm used to. It's going to take a little while to put that together, and it would probably be better developed by the person that's going to be sitting in this chair hopefully for 5-7 years, something like that. But
Yeah, and that's, I mean, not so specific while we're going through a complicated audit system, but just in the back of your mind, just think that maybe we'll be moving to that, and as a kind of a buffer in your thought process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, those are basically the issues I wanted to bring before the board and let you know about. And it's been my hope to kind of, for this meeting, just to kind of listen to what your priorities are. I know I've spoken with a couple of you, but it would be nice if there were things you want in this budget. If we could reach some consensus on that today, I would kind of know what to focus on and what not to focus on.
I guess my first thought would be broadband, which we voted at our last meeting to proceed with that. And I believe the zoning is covered in this year's budget, and I believe it's supposed to be finished by the end of this budget year, but if it's not, then we'll need to make sure there's funding in the upcoming year to finish that, because that's something that we gotta get done. And another thing that, I think we've had several discussions about this, and we talked actually about something different at our last meeting, but litter, I don't know if it's possible to, I can't remember, I think they come twice a month now to do litter pickup. The people we've got contracted with, Dixie Landscaping. I'm thinking if we can increase that to maybe 4 times a month, and to see what the cost is.
It'd be good.
And I think that was it, the stuff that I wanted to make sure that we didn't overlook. So I don't know if any other commissioners have anything they want to add.
And thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. I do have some things
Okay, go right
for the
ahead.
board to consider. Number one, our primary construction project over the next 18 to 24 months is the new middle school. And we have said for some time that we can deliver that school between $30 and $33 million.
Right.
And we all know that inflation is just going leaps and bounds, and construction costs are extremely high and growing. I guess the request I have is that we hear from our architects, give us a project plan so that we'll know when we're expected to fund the new middle school, and give us a current update on the cost estimate.
Okay. Yeah, the school board's working on that, and I think they selected an architectural firm some months back, and they're working on the design. I don't know how close they are with that, but some county manager could contact the superintendent and see how far along and what information they have to share with us. You're absolutely right there. I got a lot of thought on the middle school.
since he's saying about school, I talked to Ms. Berry, I think it was last week. The $5 million that was earmarked for the school, I wouldn't think that money's in our fund balance, and trying to get some clarification on that, because technically, do we have 11 million, do we not? I know you didn't have a full amount of what, but confirming that that 5 million is part of that number that you're gonna finally give us. Is that correct, Ms. Berry?
The 11 million in fund balance is a general number. It's our understanding that the 5 million earmark it's already been earmarked, and there's 11 million there. Just to throw in the settlement that we discussed at the meeting involving a couple $1 million, has not been earmarked. So I think that number will need to come out of the fund balance. So that $11 million fund balance figure, I would feel more comfortable. I guess I would feel more comfortable with the fund balance number after we reconciled our bank statements, which should be done by the 1st of next month. So that 11 million is a general number. There will have to be the settlement we discussed at the last meeting taken off of that 11 million.
So technically, we have whatever the fund balance plus the 5 million. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
And the only questionable funding is based on the construction from the water department, the money that we're talking about when you're saying the contract. You're talking about, that's still in the fund balance, the money for, that's in enterprise though, right?
Yes, and I guess what I'm saying is that money, normally what you would do when you enter into a phase of a contract being in breach, you would encumber those funds so that when the results come about, you can then move that money forward. It's we have no, as far as we know, those monies were never encumbered, so those monies for the settlement are gonna have to come from some fund balance number, or I believe so I think there was some discussion about whether that had already been accounted for, and the answer is no.
So if the general fund was to provide that money now, would we be reimbursed from the utility fund later?
Those issues can be, because you could ideally you wouldn't supplement the water and sewer fund, but you certainly legally can. It just depends on where the cash flow goes as we get the payment schedule done. We still haven't reached that point as to when those monies are going to be needed, but you would be free to move general fund money there in order to expedite that. But hopefully that's something that could be avoided.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Ms. Berry, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Gatewood?
You still on me? All
Yes,
right,
sir.
very
Sorry,
good.
Mr. Gatewood.
The other thing regarding employees that we've talked about repeatedly, and I'd like to at least look at what it would cost to include it in this upcoming budget, and that is on the 401k contribution, move regular employees from 3% to 4%. And as we all know, sworn law enforcement officers receive 5%.
Okay.
The other is to take another look at our longevity pay plan. For many, many years, it was capped at $1,200. 10 years ago, we capped it at $1,600, a $400 increase, and I would like to see another $400 increase, capping it at $2,000, if we can afford to do it.
Let's say just to make sure that the county manager gets all that information so they can use it in their budget preparation to see, like you said, where it falls out and whether or not we can afford it.
And on cost of living adjustments, with inflation roaring the way it's going, I would be inclined to hold off until January to make any adjustment, and then we follow the lead of the Social Security Administration and give our staff the same percentage increase as Social Security delivers to us, or most of us.
Okay.
Sometimes though, Social Security is such a minimum, I think we'll have to do more.
last year, I believe,
It was
Social
good last
Security
year.
delivered
The
like
first time in a long
5.4% or 5.7%, and we followed suit with the additional 3.4% in January.
Right.
And I'd be really surprised if it's anything lower than 5.7% in this coming year, but
I agree, but, the years prior to last year, there were many years there where there was nothing.
oh, absolutely.
And I believe that was one of the reasons they did such a good increase this past year. Now, will they continue to follow suit? That remains to be seen. So, we may need to be flexible. In other words, if they drop back to their previous levels, then I'm sure we'd wanna do better than that.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
right. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
One good indicator, the federal government looks at the military and their cost of living increase just as an indicator that you might look at.
I think it was 2% for the military.
Okay, Mr. Gatewood?
Right? On the Axe facility, I'd like to see the budget include, design of that facility so that in this next year, we can begin construction. And I know we already have a $1 million grant.
Million and a half.
$1.5 million, but we have to provide, I believe, $300,000
Right.
for that amount. So we need to include that in our budget
Okay.
to make sure it happens.
All right, good point.
That's all I have for the first round.
I have something.
Mr. Mill?
I would wish we could look in, as far as we talking about our employees, is maybe trying to pay for their, vision and, dental plan. If we can come up with a amount and see would that work to show the appreciation to our employees that, hey, we'll pay for the, vision and dental.
But like I said,
Just on the
everything's the
employee,
table now.
yeah.
Once they run the numbers, and we'll see where we're at and determine what we can do.
I was, very interested in having a dental plan for myself, other than what was provided by the state. So I went to my insurance agent and told him what I wanted, and his answer was, there's no such thing as a good dental plan. That it's really just not there. You just have to take as good as you can get, but it won't be good.
Yeah. I think the county's looked at that before, but that's neither here nor there. Like I said, whatever we discuss here today is on the table, and, the manager and staff will run the numbers on it. And then
See if we can do it.
See what,
I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm just
Right.
saying it might be more difficult than we think
Right.
to come up with a really good plan, but we should look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
With today, we wouldn't be getting into specifics of an additional individual position for the county, right? That wouldn't be something to bring up today, would it?
I guess it would depend on what it is. He's already talked about personnel, and what we said a little while ago was, look at current open positions and, what we need to do where we are, as opposed to anything past that for now.
Okay, cause there is one position that we're gonna have to, add, but do you want me to mention that?
Go ahead.
Okay, in the inspection department, several years ago, the lead inspector retired and the assistant took his job, and he has no assistant now, and to be certified as a building inspector is a pretty lengthy process, and the current building inspector that we have is nearing retirement, and if we don't get an assistant in there to replace the assistant that he used to be pretty soon, so he can start getting certified, I think it's level 1 is the lower end, takes a couple of years, then level 2, and eventually level 3 for commercial buildings and things that we're hoping to one day be seeing more of. We would really need to get that assistant in place so he can start being trained and certified to take over that position, because if we don't, we're gonna have to contract out the building certification person to come and do our inspections. And we went through that with the septic for a while, with the perk testing, and it costs a lot of money, and it holds up prosperity, so.
Chairman,
Yes,
if
sir.
I could address that.
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Again, I think that's a good point. Again, I haven't been here long, but that's one issue that I've noticed, and that's one of the things I plan to discuss with every department, is just kind of a lack of organizational depth, lack of redundancy. I look around and there's like one person that is handling something and very little very few other people know a lot about it, which
Right.
puts us in a precarious position, which I wouldn't have thought much about when I was younger, but now that I'm older, you just never know what's going to happen. So I think that's one of the questions I'm gonna ask every department, and that was on my list for inspection is, what do we need to do to create, some depth, redundancy, not necessarily you may have to hire someone, but is there some backup plan for to contract somebody, or, because the reality is, you take them one day at a time, and so that is a priority of mine as I meet with each department.
I think it's an excellent point. One, what do we do if we have an emergency?
Right.
And the existing building inspector is out for 6 months?
Mhm.
On a more proactive stance, succession planning says we need to hire an assistant, so that person is ready to step up when the main person retires.
And that's kind of a really nice thing for a county citizen to get in a position that has some upward mobility instead of scrambling at the end to bring somebody in from somewhere else.
I agree.
Okay. Any other commissioner have anything?
Mr. Chairman, I have one other thing.
Oh, you do? Okay.
It may not affect the budget, but perhaps we could fund it with our COVID money.
Yeah.
I read an article yesterday. It says gasoline prices surge above $4 a gallon with no end in sight. And that was from the Wall Street Journal just yesterday. Last year this time, the average price of regular gasoline was $2.79. The average price today in Waysboro is right at $4.20. And there are some that says in the not too distant future we'll be paying $5 a gallon for gas. In California, they're already paying over $7 a gallon for regular.
In Richmond County, regular is $4.99.
Indeed.
I have a car that will only burn high test, and I put some gas in it just last weekend, and it cost me $4.49, I believe, a gallon.
Yes, sir. But looking at our employees with food inflation, gas inflation, I just think it's time for us to do something special on a monthly basis, or maybe even a pay period basis, to assist gasoline prices, food prices. And I just have a recommendation of $200 per month per employee. And we could fund it out of our COVID money
For how long?
for 1 year.
Sooner or later, the COVID money will run out.
Sure will now.
But can we use salary, COVID money for salary?
Look at it this way, $200 a month times 12 months times how many employees do we have? 340?
Is that full and part-time employees?
That is full and part-time.
340
Go ahead, say what-
equals right at $816,000.
This is just a comment, observation. I have a condominium in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Blowing Rock is a very expensive place, one of the most in North Carolina. My taxes in Blowing Rock, from Blowing Rock and the county of Watauga, combination, is less than my taxes in Anson County on just county taxes. So we tax pretty high now. Just leave it at that.
Is there something in funding salary and COVID money that's based on $15 an hour or something? I mean, I've read a lot of COVID and there's some confusion, but I'm not quite sure that salary in general can be enhanced by COVID money. I think the lower salary, there was something in there, but again, I really don't know.
I'm trying to get my thoughts together on this part. I don't know if you know or not, but
I think that's something I can check on. As I recall, there was a salary threshold. I'll just need to look at the details on that.
Yeah.
What I'll plan to do is after I get all the feedback from the board today, I'll work towards getting kind of a checklist of how much these things would cost and
Right.
whether we could use COVID money or other monies, and try to get that to you as soon as possible so you can see kind of the checklist of how much these things are gonna cost. And where we can get the money.
Back to, Mr. Gatewood's, recommendation. It's very hard, very difficult when you give somebody something to take it away.
Yeah. So,
Very difficult.
Government's never done that before.
okay, we've heard Mr. Gateway's suggestion. I guess basically at this point, that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if COVID money can be used to cover that, because I think there were some stipulations in there that there had to be a direct impact from COVID to be able to justify using that money. And I don't know if, like the gas price and all that kind of stuff, that's not coming from COVID. It's coming from somewhere else, but Mr. Fonda can investigate that and find out. But the other thing that we'll have to be careful about is this ARP funding, because we've already committed to what is it, almost $1 million, if I remember right, 900 and some few thousand dollars, 661,000 for the sewer line on 74, and 300 and some thousand for another project. So we got to make sure we get our thoughts in mind as to what we want to do with this money. At this point, if anybody has any specific projects.
Mr. Chairman, so far, $600,000, I believe, $610,000 for the sewer line.
Okay.
$25,000 for Spectrum Broadband grant, and $575,000 to purchase the PD electric facility.
Did
So-
we check on to make sure we could do that? Reverse the money and repay it?
You can, from what I understand, you can buy property with COVID money. The thing about it is, be careful. If it's something that you might sell in the future, it's not a good idea, because if you sell it in the future, which I don't anticipate us doing that, is that you have to pay that money back, whatever you used to purchase it with. And I think they were mainly looking at land with it then. But that's the stipulation on COVID funding now. If you purchase property with it, you're good. But it's at whatever point in the future, if you sell it, you've got to pay that money back.
Chairman, if I
I
could
think
add-
we got a really good deal on that PD electric building.
We did.
Very pleased.
If I could add too, I know that at the last meeting this was discussed, we did not pay for the building out of COVID money.
Right.
If the board wants to do that, you know, we could, and we could simply do that as an accounting process. We would not have to go back to
Okay.
them or whatever. But I think that would, if you want to do that, I think the board would have to provide specific direction to do so, then we could kind of handle that internally. But again, I think, probably a discussion at some point over the next couple of months about what to do with that COVID money in its entirety. And
Okay.
maybe you could address that once you kind of decide about everything else. So I don't think there's any urgency to that. That's
Okay.
just something you can talk about in consideration of the larger amount of money.
So it's really just an accounting function, no interaction with, say, PD Electric, for example, as we talked about in the meeting.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Well,
So I'll make a motion that we direct county staff to fund the PD electric building $575,000 using COVID funds.
I would second that.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
we got a motion from Commissioner Gatewood, seconded by,
I've got a question for the amount. Did you include the closing costs? I think, then we have to go back and make an amendment, because the closing costs wasn't included.
I believe you're right.
All right, so I'll adjust my motion. $575,000 base costs plus closing costs plus cosmetic enhancements that we take before we move into the building.
Second.
That's
It's very good.
Okay, we've got an amended motion by Commissioner Gatewood, seconded by Commissioner Mims and Commissioner Sturtevant to use COVID funds for the base price plus closing cost plus upfit cost for the PD electric facility. Any further discussion? All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. It is unanimous, the motion carries.
Thank you.
On the COVID money, since only half of it was available as of now, do we know when the other half would become available?
I haven't heard any specific date, but I can call around.
But we're still on that first half limitation, right, as far as 2.3 or 3.5, something like that? Okay.
I think it was initially put out there as July, but I don't know if it's been finalized or not.
I think that the next round is coming up, so we can, before these other monies come into play,
Okay.
we should have those funds in hand, but I'll verify that.
Okay.
Don't have any exact numbers or figures, but we've also talked about the fire hydrant and water line in Morven area and using COVID funds to fund it. I think that was Commissioner Sturdivant's suggestion. We've talked about a water and sewer system assessment. We don't know what it's going to cost, but we can certainly use COVID funds to fund that. And we talked about demolition of the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
That's another big project that could come out of COVID funds.
We'll need to get costs on all of those, Commissioner Gatewood, and,
Yes.
good recommendation, but right now we don't have anything to go on, so,
The other item, and we do have something to go on here, we've
Okay.
incurred some extraordinary expenses in our finance department and IT departments, dealing with ransomware and also dealing with personnel changes, system upgrade. I would certainly recommend that we fund those extra expenses out of COVID funding, including the salary of Ms. Rita James, because we asked her to stay on an extra year to assist us.
okay, any commissioners have any thoughts on that? I guess the only thing I'm gonna say is that that's something Mr. Ponder will have to investigate, make sure that is suitable use of that money.
But there are also some fire hydrants and water lines in McFarland. Since they're existing and they're older lines, is that something that could come out of the ARP funds too? The way the county does, some of the, I know they have written a letter to Chris and them and they're gonna address them, but is that something instead of us paying for it, that they're gonna have to do, can that come out of the ARP funds also?
And have we, did anything about what I brought toward the board the other week? Have they decided when they're going out or get the people to go look and see what it will be?
Mr. Chairman, I admit I dropped the ball on that. I just
Okay.
communicated with utilities today, and hopefully I'll have an update for you by the end of the day.
Thank you,
But they'll-
thank you.
but I apologize for that.
Oh,
Okay.
You good, you good.
Okay, and back to Commissioner Mims' questions, the ARP funds are for infrastructure, so
Okay.
it's possible, because the other thing we have to keep in mind, and I don't know if McFarland was included or not, but the municipalities on the last round, each one of them got ARP funds. You know, initially, the first batch, the county had to share with them, but this last round, each one of them got it, so, you know, I will look at that first. And if we still have to assist, I'm good with it, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay.
That's a good point. All municipalities in Anson County receive those funds,
Right,
and throughout the state.
right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, just over the last week or so, it's been brought to my attention, we have a number of fire hydrant issues kind of throughout our system. So I'll ask Mr. Sessions to put together a kind of a checklist, kind of, because those things are, one, they're not inexpensive just from a capital standpoint.
Right.
They're time consuming, people are without water, but at the end of the day, you have a lot of old fire hydrants, so we might use a significant amount of this money to really go back and focus on upgrading those, because that's a public safety liability issue.
Right.
So I'll get some numbers together on that for the budget process as well.
One thing we need to do, if we, with this money too, and I know several travel through the county, you notice where a lot of the signs is tore down, the street, the name of the street
Absolutely.
sign, we need to have someone go around and put them signs back up. The turnway or whatever you call it, I call it a mess. Oh God, people listening. Hi guys. They got there by Liza School now. That is horrible. The turn, but the sign was right at first. So you didn't know that you have to keep down and then turn and come back. All that stuff need to be corrected. They need to look at it. I live in Lowesville, and I was getting ready to go across that cement.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Yeah.
this is in Richmond, but it's relevant. Your accident was caused by a person making the wrong move, isn't that
That's
correct?
right. That's right. That's right. The sign wasn't there letting him know that that was one way. But they need to go around and put those signs back up. Cause the sign is tore all the way down, or somebody took them down, or whatever. In some places, there's not even the post there anymore, where the sign was on.
You're exactly right. I've noticed it.
That may need to be a budgetary figure, because as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, our county, our utilities department is the one that's supposed to put up those signs. And we have to supply them, so that may be that will be a budgetary item. And you're correct, I've seen more and more places where those road name signs are missing. And I initially thought that it was NCDOT doing that, because what you do see is a road number. And you know, if I'm looking for Center Street and I don't see the Center Street sign and I see 1271 don't mean anything.
Don't mean anything to you.
That's right. That's right.
So,
In our part of the county, if there is even a sign, like Commissioner Woodburn said, that number is meaningless, and I think historically and out of courtesy to people that live in that area, the road should be named. It shouldn't be 1261, it should be Taylor Road or whatever, with somebody like it used to be. And some of these GIS, GPS, you know, if you're looking for Taylor Road and you see a sign that says 1261, you don't, that doesn't mean nothing. And so we spoke about that a while ago, and a lot of the citizens have been concerned either the sign is down or it's not named the name that it used to be or what they knew it as.
And the sign is.
I think that will need to be a budgetary item as well. I don't know how we can get an estimate of how many is needed, how much, but Mr. Sessions could probably fill you in on what he's done in that area.
Shouldn't be too costly.
And the other thing, as far as what Commissioner Sturman is talking about, basically, as I understand it from serving on the RPO, is that NCDOT, and they're the ones that's making these changes. You know, they did it in Polkton first, and now they just completed the one. And I don't know if they completely through the one in Louisville, because they're periodically you'll see them down there working. But they look at accident data or crash data, and that helps them determine where one or two things are needed. Well, actually three things. First of all, at one point in time, they were pretty much doing roundabouts in these areas. In other words, where nobody comes to a stop, everybody yields. Matter of fact, we're planning on doing a couple out here on 742, but they revisited it and they determined that in some cases, and I use 742 as an example, is that the cost to do a roundabout, and I'm trying to remember what that cost was, it's really high. Rather than do a roundabout, they'll do a four-way stop, and I think that's what they're planning on doing out on 742 now. So you got the four-way stop, the roundabout, and the center section where they eliminate, well, I use Louisville as an example since that's what she mentioned. Before, if you were coming from like Dollar General or the road across the street, and that you want to go straight across, you had to navigate 4 lanes of traffic. They say that was the issue. So what they've done now, they've eliminated that by not being able to go straight across. In other words, if you want to go straight across, say if you're on Dollar General side, you got to turn right, go down and make a U-turn, come back, and then make your right turn. So that's why they're doing. That's NCDOT's doing that. I don't know if we'd have any chance of getting them to relook at anything, but I guess we could put it.
Some of these roundabouts are a little confusing too.
The older I get, the
Go
more
up
confusing they are.
Up 218 in New Salem, you ever been around that roundabout?
Yes, sir.
And those up there in Southern Pine, Good gracious alive.
Yep, that one in Southern Pines, something else.
That's ridiculous.
When my dad was still around, the first one he drove on,
What they got in laws about.
the first one my dad drove on, he called it the Circle of Death.
Now they can't, and they're like the ones around here, I like them, but I have been to some places I wasn't familiar with, and I've been to, in some cities in North Carolina, and you got to be on your toes. I remember, I think I was in Raleigh, the first time and I ran up on one, and I just had to go around a couple of times to really get my bearing because I couldn't clearly tell. I knew that I wasn't sure what street I was on to start with. So I had to go around a couple of times to figure out what street I came off of so I could pick it up on the other side.
There's one in Union County when you're heading south into the country where there's no street lights and it didn't used to be one there. And you think you're on a straight road and all of a sudden you gotta go on a roundabout, but there's no street lights and you can see where people have just gone all up in the grass, hit that curve.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So they're not automatically a good thing.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
at our last commissioners meeting, we talked about a potential staff retention bonus,
Okay.
similar to what the school system has engaged. I'd like for us to really consider some sort of staff retention bonus for Anson County employees, and that could certainly be paid out of COVID funds.
Okay, well,
Okay.
another one of the things county manager can add to the list, and like I said, we'll just have to see where it goes. I will caution us though. You know, we keep talking about dollars. Somewhere it's gonna get to the point where, regardless of whether it's COVID money or not, we can't afford it. But nevertheless, like I said, today is planning. Just put it on the table and it'll be looked at. The numbers will be calculated, and we'll determine what we. Once we get that, then we'll have to prioritize what we want to do.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It points out $4.7 million is not a lot of money when you have the needs that we have here in Anson County.
That's where I was going with it.
Very definitely. So we have to do a really good job of prioritization.
Right.
For the fire departments, most of them are within a municipality, but in Burnsville, since it's not, they lost revenue from the 3 barbecues that they would have had during, I think it would have been November, March, and November again. And the revenue from that barbecue really funds that volunteer firehouse. And those lost revenue, I guess, problems are pretty widely accepted for COVID money. So I know the municipalities with their own fire departments have COVID money that could cover that, but Burnsville is a county volunteer firehouse without a municipality to cover. So just the consideration that they lost revenue from the 3 barbecues that really pay for their cost of doing business, and I think they said that was around $25,000 that they had lost from those 3. Just a number to keep in mind.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we've covered a right good bit of ground. Mr. Pompey, do you have anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only other thing I had, and I think we covered everything that I had in mind except for one thing. I've been speaking with the IT director.
Okay.
And I know there's some additional money in this year's budget, you know, simply because of the ransomware attack and issues about security. Just, he's thinking in terms of moving us towards a kind of a 5-year replacement cycle for computers. And I know that time frame sounds good because that's the same replacement schedule my wife has for me on computers, because I don't need a new computer, but for whatever reason, if I don't have a new one, it messes up our system at home. So that makes sense, but don't be surprised if I'm trying to get him to develop a figure for me.
Okay.
On what it's gonna take to get us going on that, because he told me how many 7-, 8-year-old computers we had, and we'll address what we can in this year with the money we have, but you may see that number reoccurring next year, because that you were here for the ransomware attack, I wasn't, so I won't tell you that. I've just seen kind of still dealing with a lot of the fallout from that, so we'll do what we can in the future to minimize that.
Okay. I mean, that's a very valid point, I think, and makes all the sense in the world to do that. I know in my previous life, we basically had a rotation system for all of our PCs, desktops and laptops. Every year, a certain number of them were replaced. Didn't matter whether you wanted it or not, you got one.
And the only other thing I'd say, I appreciate all this input. What I'll do is I'll get up with directors and get estimates for everything that was discussed and send that out to the board, so you kind of have a menu of the things we talked about today and what those costs are. And then as we head into the budget process, as I'm developing it, I'll get more feedback from you once you actually know what the costs are.
Okay.
But I appreciate all the input.
Okay, thank you.
I guess we're getting near the end of our meeting, and before we end, I would like to compliment Mrs. Cannon on the wonderful breakfast she provided for us. It was absolutely first class.
She does a great job. Every time.
All right. And that is correct. We are, and I just thought of something I didn't mention in my little spiel too, and I've mentioned this the last couple of years, electronic board packages. That's something I think we need to it was actually in this budget year, but I don't want it to drop out. Ms. Cannon can fill you in on it.
Okay.
We use it at community college. In other words, instead of these paper packages that we get, it's a software program, and you can use iPad, laptop, and we can even use our system here for the meeting materials. And she will be the administrator. And the thing that really gets me is we have sheriff's deputies running up and down the road trying to find us to give us packages.
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense, so that's another thing, Mr. Pond, if you would add to the list.
I will work on that as well. That's actually, that saves you money long term when you head in that direction.
Saves her all the time, and you don't have to print out all that paper, put those packages together and the whole 9 yards, so. All right, that's the last. Anything else?
I just wanna, I'm sorry.
Okay. And there again, I wanna piggyback off, Dr. Sims. Our clerk is wonderful. There's nothing I can't say for y'all, I don't speak for me. If you call and ask her something, if it ain't within that hour, or it'll be within that same day, she's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Not because
No,
we're friends,
agree.
she's wonderful. She would get you what you need, no matter what. And I thank you, Denise. Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
I know she don't want me to say this, but I'm older than her. She's going through something. She was going through something when we had the meeting.
oh, yeah.
And she never said one mumbling word. And she's going through something. And, she's still on the job.
On the job, oh, yeah.
She sure is.
So, yes, sir, Commissioner Gatewood.
I would like to congratulate Commissioner Brickett, because the citizens of Ansonville will soon have a new Family Dollar store. And he was the impetus in making that happen, okay?
Okay, and,
You're not gonna let we can have words, cause he don't know how to be short. And I'm going home.
okay, all right, I think we're at the end of a meeting, and once again, from the board, we commend Ms. Cannon for the job that she does, and, you're gonna have prayers as far as your situation's concerned. And at this time, I don't know that there's any need for us to get together again this month, I don't think. If there is, let me know, and we'll recess again.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Ponder, do you have anything else, once?
I don't see any, I think I have the direction I need, and I appreciate that, and what I'll be doing. I don't see a need for us to meet, but I think it's my role at this point to start getting you feedback, data you need to make your decisions. So I'll be getting that out to you as quickly as possible, and hopefully I won't burden you with another, special meeting or anything like that.
All right, and the last thing, I'll just direct, Ms. Cannon to get a copy of the retreat package from last year for those commissioners that may not have it, and make sure Mr. Ponder has one, if he doesn't already. Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sims, second by Commissioner Gatewood to adjourn. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous, we are adjourned.
I make a motion, y'all get a piece of cheesecake at my